to a show.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Off the Mat's Nerdcast this time. And normally I do these episodes with my good friend Marilyn Phil. You know, we'll always sit down and talk about one of the Marvel shows or a movie or something that, you know, that fits into that category. But this time I'm actually going to have on a new guest. But no, not a new guest, a new Nerdcast guest, but an off the mats veteran, I guess you could say. So I want to welcome back to the podcast, Mr. Mike Leng. See, I got to say it slowly because I always feel like I'm saying Mike Leng. Mike Leng.
Yeah.
Little Mike. Mike, welcome back to the show. And what's up, my friend? How are you feeling?
I'm great, buddy. Thanks very much for having me back. Always kind of glad to come in and jump in on the Off the Mat podcast, and even more so now that we can talk about what really matters.
It's always funny whenever we're doing, like, you know, the base podcast, I guess, if you will. And once you get towards the end of the episode, you know, we start opening up and then you start talking to folks. It's like, oh, wait a minute, you like that too? You know, we're already like an hour and a half in, about to finish up. It's like, well, shit, let's talk that instead. Like, let's run another hour. Like, so that's why, like, afterward, you know, like, yeah, like, I like Star Wars. You know, like, you've like quoted Star Wars like in comments and stuff. I was like, okay, all right, you know, we can make this happen. So thank you for making the time and doing this, and you know, just, you know, putting it out there. I messed up the scheduling and the timing, so thank you for accommodating and you know, working with me here.
It's no worries, but it's just one of those things. We've got the pond between us. It's always a bit hard to get time zones and stuff kind of on the same page.
Yeah, it's still one of those things where it's like, oh man, did I drop the ball this time? But it's okay. We're here. We've got it worked out. And so I want to, I guess, with you, when it comes to like nerd culture, if you will, you know, what's kind of your nuts and bolts? What are you really into?
So Star Wars, obviously, big Star Wars fan, big comic book fan, which kind of, I suppose, the Marvel side, particularly like Spider-Man. I started reading, and then Wolverine comics after that, and then a lot of kind of like Avengers stuff following that. So obviously all the movies that kind of surround that and TV shows and things like that. We're living in a really good time where we've got all these kind of offshoots. Like, if I could go back in the time machine like 30 years and tell my younger self, like, look at this that you're going to have, like, it just absolutely like blow my mind. Like, even just the first Avengers movie, like, I remember seeing that in the cinema and I was like, this is all I have ever wanted. Like, this is incredible. So it's a good time to be alive as a nerd.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's, I remember when we got the first X-Men movie, and that was like, I know everybody, you know, calls back to the, you know, Blade, the first Blade.
Yeah.
And they're like, you know, this is what kicked off. And it did, but Blade wasn't like a mainstream name. It wasn't a household name. You know, even during the time that movie came out, we had just had the Midnight Sun storyline and, like, you know, Spirits of Vengeance, Ghost Rider, all that. And so I knew Blade just kind of off of that. And I was like, huh, that guy got a movie, but I can't get a Spider-Man movie? But what are we doing?
It's crazy, like, when you think about, like, if obviously Marvel sold the rights to Sony because they were in trouble at the time and the general money. But if you think of all the characters that you would have of Marvel that you could make a movie with, like, I understand why they might want to hold on to like X-Men and Spider-Man and, you know, like Captain America, etc. But even if you think like The Punisher or something like that, makes, like, it's much easier to turn that into, you know, you'd think a decent blockbuster movie than Blade, which is kind of really out there because you've got to kind of explain that there's vampires and that he's a daywalker of the vampires and this is what's kind of happening, you know, and all this kind of stuff. But thankfully they did, because it's like 1 and 2 are great. Three's a bit meh, but
Yeah, three's one that like I've watched it, but anytime that I watch it, I don't watch it. It's just on in the background, and I'm just like doing chores or something.
yeah,
Uh, I should probably sit down and actually just really, really, now that I'm older, it's like let me go back and revisit and see. That's the tricky thing though, because it's like when you go back and watch those older ones, it's like at least for me, I start to nitpick a little bit, and it's like,
yeah,
oh man, and what could have been. It's like you mentioned the Punisher, and the Punisher had Dolph Lundgren, as the
yeah,
Punisher. I want to say back in '92 or '94 or something like that, and
yeah,
even with that, it wasn't even the comic book movies that we got growing up were Superman, Batman, the ones that we knew. These were the mainstream ones, but you never really got your Marvel stuff. I mean, you had your Incredible Hulk movies made for TV, and it was like that's what we're kind of limited to until Blade. And even with Blade, it wasn't even like you know we still like it did well, but it still wasn't an accepted thing to have these franchises yet because
yeah.
no one wanted to take the risk.
I think it was one of those things as well that they didn't have the kind of the technology to be able to do like big superhero fights and make it look good. So it's not like they can have, like Batman's kind of obviously like a street level kind of thing, so that kind of works. But obviously Superman that they did, but that's only really like flying stuff. It was really kind of like Blade 2, where you saw the first like superhero fight, which is like in the end where he's fighting, I want to say Cormac, but that might be wrong. Um, that was like the first time we've ever seen like a really good looking superhero fight where they've got like obviously like superhuman abilities in it. But obviously after that, then they started, obviously we've got I say Spider-Man, but if you go back now and look at the web swinging on the first Spider-Man movie, it's a bit like it look like there's better fan made stuff on YouTube now than there is like in that first movie. And I love that movie, but you can see how much they improved the web swinging to jump to the Spider-Man 2. Like it was just so much better.
Yeah, like the Spider-Man franchise was one where it felt like you can kind of get away with it a little bit because like you mentioned Batman being a street level character, Spider-Man being that same level. It's just when we start looking back on these things, it's like, yeah, you can now nitpick the special effects, which sometimes I feel is unfair because it's like, you're working with what you have at the time.
Yeah,
So, you have to, be fair to that. Like whenever I go back and watch an old scary movie, people are like, oh man, that movie sucked. And it's like, well, no, for the time, the movie was actually amazing, but now it
yeah,
sucks in comparison. I do that with Spider-Man. I don't give that much leeway to X-Men because I love the X-Men and I was so happy when it was like, oh, we're getting a live action X-Men movie.
yeah,
And it was fine for what it was, but it's like when the characters, it's like, wait a minute, Sabretooth's not Magneto's bitch.
yeah,
Like, what are
yeah.
we doing here? Like,
Um,
that's not the original team. Like
yeah,
you got Iceman as one of the students, but you got Jean and Scott,
yeah.
as the teachers. Very
No
confusing.
beast, not even human beast. They're like
Yeah.
stuff. They did have a little thing. It was on the news or something where they're talking about Dr. Hank McCoy, and he was like on the news, but he was obviously hadn't had like his secondary mutation, and he was still like human Hank McCoy. Um,
Yeah.
Also, like I did a post about it before. Like if you watch X-Men back now and you see Hugh Jackman playing Wolverine, he just looks like a regular guy in it compared to like how unbelievably like shredded that he got. But somebody at some point went, yeah, yeah, that's the same as this comic book here of Wolverine. That'll do. But I think he got like a lot of kickback on that, obviously, from like when I saw it, I was like, no way is this dude going to play Wolverine. It's going to be shocking. But I was wrong.
I mean, it kind of speaks to his dedication because I mean, he went in and put in the work and kept working. And now in the background, I have a Deadpool and Wolverine on. It's like, geez,
Yeah.
Louise, like we're like 20 plus years into it. He's still Wolverine and probably going to continue to be Wolverine at this point.
Yeah.
But it's just, playing in that pot. of nerdom at that time, especially. I mean, we had Spider-Man, we had X-Men. We started getting a lot more Marvel stuff. And then start getting our Star Wars, prequel stuff, what, 99 and moving forward too. So it's like, those early 2000s, it was at the time, especially like a great time to be a nerd because it was like we were getting
Yeah,
everything. And, you know, I feel like in the comic book realm, I think they got a little greedy because then they're
yeah,
just making movies. It was like, let's make Daredevil. Okay, cool. Like, put it out. And it was like, okay. And then like make Electro too while we're at it. Like, you
yeah.
probably shouldn't. Like, please
I
don't.
think that I think they've got a bit like that now after after Infinity War and things like that. They're like, we'll just make everything and just get it out there because we can't miss. You know what I mean? With Marvel, everything's like a smash. Like we can't miss. And then they had a run of quite like poor projects that got like a lot of kickback. And I think it's probably like coming like the other way. Like obviously they had some incredible ones. Guardian of the Galaxy 3 was great. You had X-Men 97 that I'm going to include in that was like really, really good. Um, and a few other bits, but you had like stuff like She-Hulk that was like way like off the mark.
Yeah. Like, I do feel like after Endgame, it's hard though because it's like, hey, we're making money and this is doing well. You want to keep making money, that's just the game we're in. But it's like after Endgame, it's kind of like you guys can chill for a little bit, give it some
Yeah,
time, like give it enough time for us. I guess story wise, you look at it as like Tony's dead, so you got to play with the aftermath of that. So you go to Spider-Man, how is he affected by this, and
yeah,
and that makes sense. We can wrap that up there. But then they followed up with Black Widow, which was supposed to be taking place between Civil War and Infinity War.
yeah,
And it's like, okay, like this is, this movie is like 3 years too late, number one.
yeah,
But you're still trying to play in that sandbox. It's like, well, we can make anything and it'll work. And to be fair, the whole COVID thing kind of affected it. But I feel like even if that went to theater, I don't know that it was going to do as well as they were hoping, because Endgame happened. And yes, Endgame. I I've spoken very, very like honestly about Endgame. I actually didn't like it. I liked
yeah,
hour one and I liked hour three. I'm a
yeah,
nut for time travel, and when you throw time travel in and start playing these goofy games, it's like, whoa, wait a minute. This is, and I know it's a comic book movie, it's none of it's really real, but there's still some rules to this pretend reality. And they're like, well, no, we'll just go back and do this, and we'll take the stones back at the exact moment that we picked them up. It's like, well, if you do that though, you've altered. It's like Back to the Future too.
yeah. You
You
alter
can't
the
take.
current history. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you
So
can't go back.
it's it's a funny one because I would have much preferred them to do it and keep it like a bit truer to the comics and kind of have them like get together and go after Thanos and be able to
Mhm.
get like the gauntlet off him and then undo it and things like that, rather than he just destroyed the gauntlet, because that was weird for me because that's so out of character for Thanos. Like that's not a thing that would ever have happened. Like
Yeah.
so I would have much preferred them to go there. And like you say, hour one was great. Middle was the whole the I'm really not a fan of what they did with Thor and Hulk, like in Endgame. I thought that really like the work that they've done on those characters, they just completely ruined it with that movie and set them both back like so far. Um,
Mhm.
but then the end out kind of like I suppose it kind of like makes it up for everything, doesn't it? Because it was like that in battle was phenomenal. That was like a really good kind of send off to those 10 years that they did. But like yeah, I think they had a bit of obviously killing off Tony was a big thing. But now it's kind of dampened because they're going to be bringing him back as Doctor Doom, and you're probably going to get a version of Iron Man in one of these movies that'll probably Downey Jr. again. And I think he'll kill it, but I think that there's a lot of actors out there that you could have given the chance to that would have been really good. I don't think you
Yeah.
need to throw Robert Downey Jr. every problem that you have because it's not working.
Yeah, I think they're playing too. too much with like these actors worked before, so
Yeah,
let's bring them back to try to make it work again because they're bringing back Chris Evans, and
yeah,
it stays a mystery role. And I mean, most folks are under the impression it's going to be the Hell Hydra Cap,
yeah. Captain America.
and
Like if they do
I don't
that,
know.
especially with like the Hydra Hex, so he can pick up Thor's hammer and stuff like that, and like they do that side of it, like that'd be really cool. But I think that requires like a lot of backstory again to be able, like, have it, unless they're just doing it like as fan service, and he's got Thor's hammer, and like they don't explain it all, but all the fans would kind of know how like that came. So it's I don't know what they're going to do with this. I don't know if they're going to start throwing loads of cameos at everything and just paying like fanfare, or they're going to the Russo brothers are going to really think about it and have like a good cohesive story over the next like 5 years or whatever it is for the saga. So I'm hoping it's that one.
Yeah, that's the hope. I mean, again, that first, phase 1 through 3. I mean, it's like they nailed everything essentially. I mean,
Yeah,
there's some. I think Captain Marvel is the one that, and I feel like there's a weird kind of dual backlash to Captain Marvel. I think a lot of folks didn't like Brie Larson as the character because of some interviews, and she says some things. I didn't like it just because it felt rushed and the
yeah,
story didn't feel good. It was just like you guys like just gave us an origin story just for the sake of giving us an origin story. And there's nothing wrong with telling us who a character is. I think that is
yeah,
important. But I felt like they just kind of plopped it in there and just said, just put it out there, hurry up. We got to get this going. So that way when she comes back for Endgame, like we
yeah,
know who she is. And it's like, I mean, you I guess maybe, but it just felt sloppy. But other than that, phase 1 through 3, I mean, they nailed it completely. And I feel like when they went to phase 4, they're like they were kind of painted into a corner. And again, it could have just took some time off,
yeah,
came back and regrouped because I think, it's like a sports franchise after, you get your last hurrah, you win your championship, but now your coach retires, your star players retire, and now you're
yeah,
rebuilding. It felt like they were in rebuilding form without like establishing like who's going to lead the charge. We don't have like, Captain America has retired, Tony is dead,
yeah,
Thor is, you know, off world, and what, Hulk is injured now. You have all these things, Black Widow's dead, Hawkeye's
yeah,
retired. So it's like, okay, your core Avengers are gone. What do you
yeah,
do from here? And they're still kind of in that mode right now as they're building up and saying, okay, well, we got Captain America coming out on Valentine's Day. We've got Thunderbolts coming out in May. We got Fantastic Four coming out in July. And it's like, okay, now we got to reestablish this thing because we have a big story we're building to. But I feel like
yeah.
maybe we don't have to build towards a big story. Why don't we just have some movies?
Yeah, I think
And
that these will be movies and won't build. I think the start of it will be Doom War. I think that's what's going to kick off like the next phase of them heading like towards like that. Everything contributes towards the story. Um, I think Captain America will be rubbish. I really do. Um, I think it'll just like I think the Red Hulk thing is just like wedged in there for no kind of good reason, unless it's an incredible story and it goes back to like Winter Soldier type thing. Like that was really cool. Like if they did that, and then Thunderbolts because they're introducing Sentry. Like I really like the character arc of Sentry, so I think that'll be badly done. Like, I don't think that in a Thunderbolts movie you'd be able to have something as powerful as Sentry. Like, obviously, the general public have no idea, like, obviously, how powerful like the Sentry is, but he's like so far beyond anything that you've already got. Like, so I don't know how they'll do it. I think they'll end up nerfing him and making him just like a Captain Marvel type thing.
yeah, that's an unfortunate thing when you have characters that are like powerful like that. I mean, you have Captain Marvel, who's
Yeah,
like one of the most powerful, and they just basically said, look, this is your limit. We can't have you being too powerful, because
Yeah,
then what's the movie? And that's the same thing with Sentry. I mean, even Scarlet Witch,
yeah,
it's like you have to kind of bring their powers down a notch, because it's like, if you do it like it's in the comics, I mean, Captain Marvel, destroys it all.
yeah,
Sentry destroys it all. Wanda could just rewrite it all,
yeah,
and
yeah.
general audiences aren't ready for those types of things. It's like
No,
it's just not something that's in their
yeah.
realm.
I think it's everyone's kind of like got used to it in comic books, but then if you do it in movies, then that means that there's no consequence for anything, and they're kind of flirting with that with Iron Man and like all that kind of stuff now. But if there's no consequence to anything, then no one cares. Like in movies, like if they lose and then Scarlet Witch can just make it back to normal again, then the next time they go to lose, like no one will give a shit. They'll be like, well, they'll just fix it again. So, um,
Like,
but yeah,
at the theater,
I think they'll bring back the Scarlet Witch though. I don't think that she's dead
yeah,
after the last movie. Like I think she'll come back. She is a really strong character. Multiverse of Madness was meh. Like I don't think it was bad, but I don't think it was great. But I think they'll end up bringing her again. Like Doctor Strange, I think there's going to end up having a big arc in this. I think.
like, well, yeah, I mean, it is, he's one of their, heavy hitters. He's one of
Yeah,
the, main players. So, they'll definitely bring back whatever story they, can do with him. I think Scarlet Witch also, same deal. I mean,
yeah,
I just feel like, I mean, and that's one of my favorite characters.
yeah,
So whenever I, see any involvement of a story with her or her kids or Vision, I'm
yeah,
excited. Like, like, let me know what's going on. And then when we got Multiverse of Madness, I was just like, oh fuck, like,
yeah.
this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
But
And it wasn't too, like I say, it wasn't too bad. But again, I think that sometimes just try to cram too much stuff in. Like they didn't really need to do the whole alternative reality with, you know, bringing in Professor X and having Reed
yeah,
Richards and stuff like that. Like that didn't. It was cool. Don't get me wrong, and they were all like great fan casts. Like, but it didn't really contribute to the story apart from you seeing how powerful Wanda is to be able to do that to them all. But
yeah,
if she can do that to the world's most powerful telepath and Black Bolt and Captain America and Mr. Fantastic and things like that, it's like, well, why are you having trouble going against one? You know what I mean? Like it's
yeah.
yeah,
There's no reason, again, when we talk about like powerful characters and you see how powerful she can be, how
yeah,
powerful Captain Marvel's supposed to be, how powerful Sentry should be, and it's
yeah,
like, it's like, well, then, really do it,
yeah,
do it like big. um and I just feel like at this point they're kind of watering down a lot of the characters again for the general audience, because like you said, in the comics, you know we've seen Jean Grey die with the X-Men so many times.
yeah,
I think there's a story that's coming up now where Professor X, is coming back. You
yeah,
know, it's just, it's like in the comics, there really is no consequence. You kill a character, they come back. When Chris Claremont, did the Dark Phoenix saga, and we lose Phoenix, like his whole plan as a writer is like, she's, the character's dead. We're not bringing her
yeah,
back. So the workaround was bring her back in X Factor, make a whole new comic
yeah,
with the original X-Men, and
cool,
we'll have a different writer write for her.
yeah,
And I almost feel like that, that's where we started getting to that point of like, like, these characters really don't die. And
yeah.
in the
I'm trying.
movies, we're there.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of actually a character that stayed dead, and I'm struggling. Um,
Like a major character at
yeah,
least.
they had Spider-Man in the Ultimate Universe, the first run of the Ultimate universe.
Yeah.
Obviously, he died and stayed dead, and you got Miles Morales, which is really cool.
Yes.
Um, I'm still trying to think of somebody but I haven't read the continuity after that. But after like Battle World and stuff, the Ultimate Universe kind of ceased to exist in it, so we don't get that old Peter Parker. I don't think has Peter Parker. Yeah, Peter Parker has died in the main 616 universe. I was going to say,
Yes.
yes. I'm trying to think of someone who's managed to dodge death or stay dead, and I'm having a tough time.
Yeah, like nothing comes to mind as I'm just even sitting here thinking about all the major teams. Like, it's like I wasn't uh a big Avengers fan growing up. So it's like I started thinking it was like anybody die in the Avengers? It's like not that I can think of because even as like growing up, if you're not a big fan of something, you still had your finger on the pulse. So
Yeah,
you always knew like, okay, that's a big storyline. They're gonna kill off like I mean, even when they went to the Age of Apocalypse story,
yeah,
back in the 90s, they advertised for months the death of
yeah,
Professor X.
yeah,
Professor X is gonna die. And then, they show and it's like, oh, that's legit, but it's for, a story to be catapulted. And then even, coming back, you had the Onslaught
yeah.
story and all the non-mutant
Oh yeah,
heroes,
yeah.
for the most part, basically the Avengers,
See,
all ended up.
Onslaught's a fantastic character that they could do.
Mhm.
Like, obviously, they haven't established X-Men really. They're kind of starting to tease it. I think obviously they're going. I think Fantastic Four in some way is going to play a part of how they do mutants. I think they're
Yeah.
going to tee it up with that, but I'm not sure how. But yeah, like going back to like your finger on the pulse type thing. Like I remember when the Death of Superman came out. Like, and I'm not really like I've read like DC stuff, especially like Batman later on, but back then I didn't read it. And I read like the Death of Superman. Like that was like a massive, massive thing. But then he didn't stay there. He was just having a nap. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, he just needed, a bit of sun, some vitamin D, and he sprang right back.
They did kill Barry Allen initially, and he
Yeah,
was done for a while until was 2011 with the New 52. They brought him back. So I
yeah,
mean, he was dead probably the longest of any of the
yeah,
major characters I can think of.
yeah. The kind of because it was Wally West, wasn't it? After him. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. I
Um,
didn't read Flash comics.
nor yeah, same. Like a lot of DC comics I didn't really read DC until the New 52 to be honst.
Yeah, I really like
Because it
New
was
52. Like I read like
same.
the first run of that. Like it was cool. I like a lot of the character design and stuff in it and things like that. Like uh, I think that speaking of DC and things, I think that if Marvel don't get their hands on good character development driven movies, James Gunn's going to come out this year and absolutely wade through everybody. Like
Oh yeah.
his movies are so characters strong and he can pick them and develop them so well that unless they've really got something dialed in, he's going to absolutely come out swinging with this DCEU. Like, so hope they're ready. But it's good because we're going to hopefully get some really, really good like DC movies because there's some strong characters.
Oh yeah. I think of like pro wrestling uh back in the I guess early 2000s, well 90s. There was WWE and WCW. When WWE bought WCW, there's no longer competition.
Yeah,
So once the competition goes away, you start making not great content because like everyone's going to come to you anyway. There's nowhere
yeah,
else to go. And I feel like that might have been a little bit of the thing with, the MCU. Also, it's like, well, DC's kind of on a weird hiatus and they're trying to rebuild. So let's go ahead and put content out and people are going to watch what we put out. But now with DC kind of being revitalized with James Gunn, it may force Marvel to step their game up because a lot of a lot of stuff's like highly anticipated. We got Superman coming up. Jason Momoa has been cast as Lobo.
yeah. That's
You got
really cool.
Supergirl.
Yeah,
Uh, all this stuff, and the Penguin TV series. You know,
yeah,
did phenomenal. So
yeah.
it's like everything's clicking over there at DC right now.
Yeah, I think that obviously the mistake that DC made in that is they tried to play catch up with Marvel. Well, Marvel took
Mhm.
10 years to kind of get the main storyline running. They tried to get big blockbusters like out the gate and it didn't work because you could tell it was rushed. But now, like, if you think you've got like that new Superman movie coming out, obviously they've had success for Penguin. The Batman movie was well received with Robert Pattinson. I don't know if he's going to like carry over into the DCU, or they're just going to kind of keep that separate. But I quite liked him as a young Bruce Wayne. Like, I really like the Batman Year One, like, comic book run. So it fit quite well with that for me. It wasn't like a super polished Batman. It was still kind of like, you know, a bit rough around the edges, which I quite like. But then I like Ben Affleck's Batman of like an old and jaded one. I thought that was cool as well. So I know there's talks of what's his name? He plays Reacher, absolute unit of an individual, Alan something. I've heard that he might be doing it, but I think he's too big for it. You can't have a Batman that's bloody 6 foot. Well, he's supposed to be actually. Bruce Wayne is massive, isn't he? I think Bruce Wayne
he's
is
like 6'3".
Yeah, like 6'3" and like 200 odd pounds. So actually, he's probably the most comic book accurate one. But you can't have Batman absolutely towering over like Lobo and Superman. It just looks a bit ridiculous. Like if you had kind of like a skinny Superman and like a slightly more jacked Lobo, and then an absolutely massive Batman.
I mean, you know, just, you know, say Rob Liefeld drew it or something. It's like he's known for doing some like weird like comparisons next to other characters, but I loved Affleck as Bruce Wayne and Batman for that matter. It's just he had the look. You know, it's like, oh, there's anyone that looks like Bruce Wayne, it's this dude right here. So I wish that we would have gotten like an actual like, you know, solo movie for him.
Yeah, well, he write one, and it was like him and Deathstroke, wasn't it? Like when you saw Deathstroke at the end of like Snyder's Justice League, you were like, holy shit, like that's incredible. Like that's so kind of like the perfect casting, and he looked incredible. I would have loved to have seen that movie against like a Deathstroke character, and would it been a like darker, because Affleck would have been able to do like a darker like Batman like that, like we've had. But to be fair, when you think about franchises with comic books, like Batman's really doing well. Like if you think of many different actors that it's had, and they've all been, you know, there's like obviously I don't think Ben Affleck had the greatest material to work with, but apart from that, like, you know, Batman's, you know, it's not really kind of faltered.
Like I think with Batman, that's kind of the franchise you can always turn to, and it should work. You know, like Batman, and even Spider-Man, really. It's like those two, you feel like they're always going to work. I mean, and you know, and now in the later years, we're seeing that Wolverine always works, Deadpool always works. But I think with those especially, there's time that's put into it where you're like, okay, let's make sure we're doing this the way it you know needs to be done for the audience to be engaged, but also for the character to really still get fleshed out. Because I think that's, you know, some issue we ran into with, you know, the DC, you know, trying to catch up to the MCU is like, you know, they rushed it, so you didn't get your characters fleshed out. You know, you jump into you know, Man of Steel, which I love. Man of Steel, it's one of my favorite Superman properties. I know a lot of folks didn't like it, and that's cool, you know, but it just it made it feel real worldy, you know, for a superhero movie. And then when you jump to BVS, it's like, okay, you know, that had its problems, but I still enjoyed it. And you know, but it still felt like they were like rushing through the things to really get to a you know, a you know, kind of MCU type finale movie, where it's like, dude, if you just take your time and give some years in between these projects, because you're going to always make the money and you're going to always be able to like get where you need to be.
I
But
think it was
they didn't believe it.
like a pressure thing. Like for me, again with that movie, it was kind of like they just wedged Doomsday into it. You know what I mean? Like at the end, like if they hadn't have done that and just focused on like the good character development that we're having between Bruce Wayne and Superman, you know what I mean? Like there was great chemistry there between them and the opposites of how they are. And they stayed true to like pretty true to the comics, how Batman could fight Superman and things like that. But then it was just kind of, and Doomsday with like like, let's be honest, like Jesse, what's his name, was a terrible Lex Luthor. Like, he was so bad.
Yes.
Like, it's such a shame that they got rid of Henry Cavill as Superman. I thought he was fantastic casting. Like, I really did.
Yeah.
But that means he can go and do, like, he's doing all the Warhammer stuff, isn't he? That I am looking forward to.
Yeah. I think as far as casting goes, I felt like they did a solid job. You know, Cavill, Affleck, Gal Gadot. Uh, even after like kind of seeing Jason Momoa as Aquaman, like initially I was like, I mean, you know, I want my blonde hair, blue eyed Aquaman, you know,
Yeah.
but seeing Momoa played a role, and even my wife kind of pointed out, I was like, well, you think about like, you know, he's the king of Atlantis, and like, you know, you're looking at like, you know, the region of where he would be and all this. It makes sense. I was like, I guess, you know, I'm gonna run with it. It's cool. I'm happy with it. Let's go. Flash was kind of the one that I felt like Ezra Miller, he felt more like Wally West and less like, you know, Barry Allen, but you know, you know, they made it work.
Yeah.
In Cyborg, I mean, we didn't get enough Cyborg, I feel like, to really, at least for me, I didn't feel like we had enough to be able to make any kind of judgments on the character.
Yeah, I think again the problem with it, to kind of introduce him, but then they had him kind of like battling with his new abilities and questioning them, to being able to link with mother boxes and stuff like that, which is, you know, generally something that you would like. You could get like a good movie out of Cyborg.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Cyborg's such a strong character that I think he was done like a disservice. And obviously, the actor who played him, there was a lot of stuff, wasn't there, apart from him and Josh Whedon, stuff like that he didn't get on with, and that was just DC to a point. So
Yeah,
it's a shame. But like, I didn't hate the Justice League with the Zack Snyder's Justice League. I didn't think it was that bad. I thought it was much better than obviously the original.
oh yeah, yeah. My wife and I, we sat down and watched it, and with it being a 4 hour long movie, it was paced very well because
Yeah,
we didn't realize we had been sitting for 3 hours.
yeah,
We like, you know, we looked at the time, and I says to my wife, because she works overnight, and this was one of those days where she hadn't been asleep yet, you know, so it was a Friday, you know, we're home, we're sitting down watching it, we're 3 hours in, and I'm looking at her like, you know, she should be, you know, ready to pass out by now. So, you know, she's worked all night, she's been up all day, and we're on hour 3 of this movie, and I go, you want to finish the movie, or you know, we can come back to it tomorrow? She's like, no, like, we're good.
yeah,
Like, I'm engaged. Let's go. Because I mean, it was paced so well that, and the story was good. I mean, it's unfortunate that, you know, we didn't get this initially, and I think Warner Brothers also, there's a lot of, you know, silly stuff going on with them, because you know, they wanted this much time for the movie, and you know, he was like, well, we need more, and they're like, nah, we're gonna, you know, we need only 2 hours, and he was like, well, we're gonna need more than 2 hours, and you know, it just goes to show us like, let, you know, the people do what they do, and you
mm,
know, the executives just give us the money.
yeah,
There was a video I just saw last night, actually, talking about Civil War, Captain America Civil War, and
yeah,
what almost happened.
yeah.
And you know, the video, the way that they explained it is like, well, look, they were trying to bring the Red Hawk into that. You
Good.
know, it's like, Jesus Christ, like, relax. You know, there's plenty of time. You don't need to like just force this dude in. But they wanted to bring the Red Hawk in. They wanted to have Baron Zemo be like the, you know, the main villain that they're physically fighting. The Avengers
Yeah,
are physically fighting them. They wanted to introduce the Wasp. There's all this stuff,
yeah,
and the Russos actually were ready to walk away.
yeah,
They're like, no, we don't. This isn't a movie we want to do. And then
yeah.
Kevin Feige apparently was ready to like walk as well.
Good.
And then finally, Disney just said, look, we'll step back. You guys make the movie.
Yeah,
And that's what you need to do. Just let the people who know what they're doing make the movie, because these executives always want to like, well, I want to put my hand in it so that way, you know, I have some say so, and you know, my ego gets stroked. Let the workers work.
yeah. I think a good thing now is you kind of hit on the head there, that before it was kind of like 90 minutes, 2 hours for a movie, but now it's kind of coming out that fans, as long as the material's good, will sit. for 3+ hours to watch. Like, Lord of the Rings proved that anyway, like long before, you know,
Mhm.
like if they came out tomorrow and said, oh yeah, then like, the new Mandalorian movie is going to be 8 hours with like with intermissions, like I'd be like, take my money. Yeah, absolutely. Like, but as long as we don't get like the last set of sequels, like them together, like I unfortunately killed myself in the cinema. It'd be terrible.
Yeah, it's like when you look at how a lot of these movies go now. I mean, you mentioned the Lord of the Rings, and that's one where you see the original theatricals, and they were long themselves, and then you get the
Yeah,
extended cuts,
yeah,
and you sit at home and you got two separate DVDs for one movie. It's like, oh my god. But we sat through those things. We sat through them because, like you said, if the material is good, you know viewers will watch the content versus if you give us like using TV shows for instance.
yeah.
You look at all the shows that Disney Plus has now. A lot of the shows, and granted I do like that they're 9 episodes,
Mm,
no more than 10, because more often than not you get all the material that you're supposed to have instead of getting a lot of filler. Like
yeah,
there's Daredevil on Netflix.
yeah, yeah,
There's like a couple episodes that were just episodes where I was like, I don't know that we need these episodes. Let's
yeah,
get back to the action of the show. The Book of Boba Fett. Like, and I think that's where I kind of stopped with Star Wars because
yeah,
I came home. I would come home from work and we put on any of the shows that were on at the time for Disney Plus. And when we got the Boba Fett, we would come home. I would come home. We would put the show on. I would take a nap. My
yeah,
wife watched it all. She can tell us all about it, but I don't
yeah,
know what happened in that show because as soon as I hit play, my eyes went closed and
yeah,
it just didn't feel like the content was anything that I was feeling engaged with. And I also feel like too, there's this push to like let's try to reel people in with nostalgia. Let's keep
yeah,
that nostalgia and keep them here. And it's like, yeah, give me new stuff, dude.
yeah. I think that the problem was they kind of started off, wasn't it? It wasn't a Boba Fett that was true to the character of Boba Fett. Like I was hoping that it was going to be him back, like being a bounty hunter, etc.
Mhm.
Um, and then halfway through it, it seemed like they lost steam. And to save it, they're going to throw the Mandalorian in there, like Dinger and Grogu and stuff. We're just going to throw these guys in, like so it saves the show. Like Cad Bane and stuff like that, I thought was pretty cool, to be honest. Like, I thought that like was cool how they did a couple of characters, but the Mandalorian and Grogu didn't need to be in it at all. Like it was showing like Grogu's like Jedi training and stuff in it, and it's like this is a Mandalorian thing, not a like a Boba Fett thing. But I don't think you'll get another Boba Fett now. I think you're going to get one more. I think didn't they say they do one more series of Mandalorian and then a movie, and that's going to like
Yes.
tie up like a lot of that. And I don't know if they're going to put Ahsoka in that. That Ahsoka will probably be in that. I really like that series. I really like the Ahsoka series.
Hmm.
Um, the Acolyte I thought was rubbish story, but the best lightsaber choreography that we've seen probably since like episode 3. Like I thought
Oh,
that like yeah, like I thought it was really cool. But yeah, like they're the same. Like like hitting some stuff. Ahsoka was really good. The cancelled like the Acolyte. Um, I don't know where they're going to be like with the new movies and stuff. Like I think they're really struggling to do like good Star Wars movies at the moment.
yeah. Actually, I did watch Ahsoka. I,
Yeah,
I, I, I was in for that. Um, that was the last Star Wars property I watched.
yeah.
I think. Yeah, I didn't watch the Alkalite. I didn't watch. I can't remember. There was one before. I can't remember right now.
There was
But
what was it called? Andor. That
yes,
was really
Andor.
good.
That
Yeah,
I
that was
didn't
really
watch
good.
that. I
Um,
heard it was really good. I just I felt like at that point I was like, look, I'm hearing fantastic things about this. I just don't feel like I want to commit to anything right now. It's like everything's been kind of like jumbled. I'm like, you know what? I'll get to it. And I still haven't gotten to it, despite hearing so many good things. And I'm hearing good things about Skeleton Crew. I'm like,
I haven't
wow.
watched Skeleton Crew. Like, I haven't checked that out yet. The good thing about Andor is because there's like no Jedi and stuff like that. It's not kind of driven with that. It's all character driven and real people. Like the effect
Yeah.
like the Empire has and stuff like that. Like it's like it is really, really good. Like if you're after something that's like, I'll be honest, I watch Star Wars for the Force and lightsabers. If there's not a lightsaber in it, I don't really care. But it was still really, really good. So it's definitely worth like checking out. The Acolyte you can probably miss, to be honest. Like, apart, you can probably watch like the lightsaber battles on YouTube, and then you've just watched all the best bits of it anyway. That had like continuity issues and all sorts. Like they talked about that Obi-Wan was the first Jedi to beat a Sith in 1,000 years, but but then obviously a Sith is in that, and then you've got Yoda came at the very end of it. It was like, so you just blatantly lying to Obi-Wan now, Yoda. Like it's just, yeah, kind of messed with stuff a bit. They should have done that a bit better.
Yeah, I'm not sure, how and why, we get to these points with, this kind of content, whether it be Star Wars, Marvel, DC, any of it. Um, what's the other one? Game of Thrones, stuff like that, where that you get so much content, you get so much lore that it starts to like contradict other things.
Yeah.
And then you wonder if it's intentional. You're wondering if the person even read the previous material. Even in comic books, whenever like we talked about characters dying, you'll have a character killed off, but then you get a new writer that comes on many years later, and they're like, well, I want to, I like that character, I'm going to resurrect that character. And I feel we get that now with these TV shows where it's like, I got a better idea, let's say this, and it's like that contradicts something that's already happened, that's a major part of the canon. So yeah.
Like one thing that I'm starting to get sucked into that I don't want to be sucked into, but my brain is causing me, is Warhammer, like 40k.
Mm-hmm.
Like I used to kind of do the models and stuff when I was a young kid, but I don't know why the laws just kind of like started to pull me in, and I'm like, and their laws so massive, like it's crazy. But obviously they had the success from the Space Marine game, and they've done secret levels that was really cool, and a few other bits, and I can feel me getting sucked into it. It's like, you should buy some of these models and start doing this. I was like, no, I don't have time.
Yeah, my buddy, he years ago tried to get me in on the Warhammer kick, and I almost took the bait.
Yeah.
He has this huge table set up in the basement, and all his models painted, and the army set up. And anytime we would go over there, I'd see him, like, this is really, really cool. And I like playing the board game Risk, so that's how he kind of broke it down to me. It was like, it's basically Risk, but you get to like paint and design your pieces. I was like, that's pretty cool. And I was so close, and then I don't know, I just felt like, you know what, because then they started showing me the books. I was like, oh, man, that's like, this is a whole new commitment for me. Like, I don't know if I can do this right now. And then I just never got to it. But one of the other friends, because the friend I'm referring to, he hosts Nerd Rage Radio podcast that I always shout out at the end of the shows. He and his friend for many years, they both ran the show, and they also both did Warhammer. The one friend, he left the show, but he still does Warhammer. I still see his Instagram. He's still painting models, still playing, and then it's really cool. But when I look at him, I'm just like, oh, it's like I can't commit. There's a lot to it, and my brain can only hold so much. And I really can't hold what's there already. I'm like Kelly Bundy. If you put a new fact in, I'm going to lose something that was previously there that was probably important, like tying my shoes.
Yeah, I'm the exact same. Like if I start to like learn how to paint models, I'll forget my son's name or something like that. It's the trade-off that we've got. However, I will say, um, having a son or a daughter, you know what I mean, is the ultimate hack to be able to revisit like your childhood stuff that with no guilt because they love it so much. Like uh, just for Christmas, like after Christmas, my son got like hooked on Pokemon, like Pokemon
Ooh.
Go and things like that, and he's like, "Oh, Dad, like this weekend can we go Pokemon hunting?" And I'm like, yes, we absolutely can go Pokemon hunting. Like, so it's I'm saying to my wife, I've got to take him. I've got to take him. He loves Pokemon. Um, I haven't managed to get him into Star Wars yet. He does like Spider-Man, but I've tried a couple of Star Wars times and he likes the lightsaber fights, but like that's about it. So
I think Star Wars is a tough one for kids these days. Like,
yeah,
because my daughter, she likes almost all of this stuff, but Star Wars is just one that does not pull her in. She like she'll watch, Marvel movies with me. She'll watch these. She loves like, Wonder Woman, Harley Quinn, which is questionable, but whatever.
yeah,
Uh but she's into it. I'll bring comic books home and she wants to read them. So it's like she's into it. But then when I put on Star Wars, she just does not care. Like
yeah,
she likes Grogu, that and
yeah,
that's it. But for obvious reasons, oh, cute little
yeah,
thing. So it's adorable. But anything else Star Wars related, she just does not care. And it's I feel like it's something that as the kids get older, it's almost like you have to kind of let them, keep it around so they'll see it.
yeah,
And then one day they'll just be like, you know what? Let me go ahead and give this a shot because, if you're like, hey, come sit down and watch this with me,
yeah,
you know, they're like, oh, I'm not really feeling this. And now that builds this kind of this, like, I don't ever want to watch it. But if it's
yeah,
like,
yeah,
okay, well, look, I'm watching it. I'm going to do my thing. And there's stuff around. Eventually, our kids are like, you know what? My dad's pretty cool,
yeah,
and he likes this. Let me go ahead and dig in. But I don't know. It's tougher for kids today, I guess, versus when we are growing up. Star Wars, it was just. I think also there's too much content. There's just so
yeah.
much stuff out there that kids like when we were growing up. Star Wars was like the thing.
Yeah,
And,
three
yeah, we had
movies. We had three
yeah,
movies and you were done. Like, that
yeah,
were
yeah,
on like normal telly at Christmas and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like it was dead accessible. Um,
yes,
where now it's not. Like I agree with you, like trying to get the right time to introduce stuff to kids. Like I know we're not supposed to talk about it on this podcast, but like jujitsu for my son, like I took him to jujitsu, and he wasn't too keen on it. So rather than kind of trying to force him into it, I'd rather, because he's only like 5 now, I'd rather kind of wait a little bit and reintroduce him to kind of see, because he sees daddy going training and stuff like that all the time. Like he'll come back to it because I'd rather him come into something that he really enjoys doing than me making him do something that I enjoy doing.
hmm
Um, so I think I'm going to do that. But it's the same with comics and stuff. Like I've tried to get him like there's some like Star Wars cartoons and stuff like that, and it's just if he's got no interest, then making him have an interest like that's never going to work with any kid. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
um, as long as he doesn't become like a crazy jock or something like that, then I'll be okay.
Yeah, that's the thing with my daughter. It's like I'll find like Star Wars animated stuff, and she just does not care. But then like Marvel, as far as comics go, they've been doing these books like what if Donald Duck became Thor, or what if Donald Duck became Wolverine? What if Minnie Mouse became Ms. Marvel or
Yeah,
Captain
yeah,
Marvel?
that's
Things like
cool.
that. And she's picking those books up and reading them, and she's really liking them because they're classic Disney characters doing the superhero stuff. So both things she's kind of connected to and relates to. She's like, oh,
Yeah,
I know Fantastic Four, I know Thor, I know Wolverine, I know Captain Marvel, and I know Minnie Mouse, Mickey, Donald, and all this stuff.
yeah,
So it's like there's kind of a blend there, and it's like, man, I wish Star Wars would kind of do something like that because
yeah,
maybe I could trick her into it, but I don't know. It's just like, look, she'll get there. I'm certain.
yeah,
It's just a matter of like you said, you don't want to force it because that was the same thing with jujitsu. She sees me go. she's interested. But I think she's interested if it's she and I because it's playtime with dad.
Yeah.
Whereas if she's actually on the mats learning jujitsu, she's like, I don't want to do this. Like I want to do what my dad was doing. He was having fun. He was doing
Yeah.
cartwheels, you
Yeah.
know.
I never thought about that actually. 'Cause my daughter's slightly older; she's 8, and like she's a big reader, like loves reading books all the time. But she's not really interested in kind of Marvel, DC, Star Wars, anything like that. But I've never thought of actually taking her down to the comic book store and like letting her look for books and comics and things like that. It's for some strange reason never like I've said to my son, 'cause he's obviously learning to read. Like when you can read, you can get comics like
Mm.
obviously that he really wants to be able to do. But I never thought about taking her, which is stupid because she loves to read, like reads for pleasure, like takes a book and sits down to read. So yeah, I'm definitely going to do that.
Yeah, always. Well, not always, but like, well, I used to always take my daughter to the comic shop with me when she was like 2. She'd see like, what was it like, My Little Pony, DuckTales, stuff like that, and she'd pick them up, and kind of flip through them. And then as she's gotten older, she's really into the Sonic the Hedgehog comic book.
Yeah.
She actually just went to see, even though we could order it here at home, she went to the theater to watch it with one of our cousins.
Mm.
And she loves Sonic the Hedgehog, and when it comes to comics, she definitely, if we go to the comic shop, that's where she's making a
Mm.
beeline right for the Sonic books, and she'll thumb through them. She doesn't actually like, she likes trades, she likes, the collected, books versus just getting like a single issue, which,
Yeah.
I appreciate that. That's cool.
Yeah.
um but anytime we go there, she's like, all right, let's go over to this section, and they have, all the little books that she likes. There's this one book called The Bad Guys, the series called The Bad
Oh
Guys.
yeah, the ones that have done the movie on Netflix and stuff. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
The books are kind of like a comic book,
All right. Okay. Cool.
and they're really cool. We just the series is completed, so we just read the last book the other night,
Mm.
and like she loves that series of books, and and the fact that now it's a movie, it just makes her so much more happier. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think, take your daughter to the comic shop. I'm sure she'll find something there because
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. I don't know why it never occurred to me. Like, we always have like, like daddy daughter dates, and she normally gets to pick like what she wants to do and stuff. So I'm spending individual time with them both. But on the next one, I think I'm definitely going to kind of like take her there and let her have a look. And there's so much in there, actual books as well, and such a diverse range. Like she likes things like miraculous and stuff like that. Like, so there's definitely going to be miraculous comic books and things like that. So that's a big win.
yeah, it's always cool when, like, us, growing up with, comics and in nerd culture, and now we see our kids, kind
Yeah,
of developing their own like little cultures as well. So it's so neat. And like you said, your daughter loves to read for pleasure, and that's super cool. like
yeah,
I was never really, comic books obviously, but it's like it was more like, the adventure of it. And it's like, now I have to continue the adventure. Whereas my wife, she'll just grab a book, sit down and read, and it's like, can't be bothered. I'm like, dude, like, I want to read my books with the pictures in them.
yeah,
And like, once I'm done, I'm excited. Like, I was doing like the trade weighting and like, just getting the bigger volumes of books, but then, recently I started going back to buying Lucy's and just getting
yeah,
them each month. And the problem with that is I buy all these books like on this table, where I typically record at. I have 3 stacks of comic books
yeah,
over the last 5 months,
yeah.
and I've read 2 of them. And I'm just like, oh no, it's happening again.
Yeah.
like,
See,
like,
that's the exact reason why I don't want to start Warhammer, because I will just have like loads of model sets just sat around. Like, and my wife always says that like the way my brain works is like it gets obsessed by something and it'll just do it all the time, and then you'll just kind of stop and move on to the
Yeah.
next thing. So it's kind of like I do it with like meals and stuff like that. Like I probably got some level of autism there that's probably tricking me to do it, but um, it's like stuff like that. So I've got to be really careful. Like I was careful. Like my daughter really likes Lego, and when she was younger, obviously it would be me who put it together for her. And then obviously I'm putting the Lego together, and my brain's like, "Have some dopamine. You enjoy this." And I'm like, "No, no,"
Yeah.
because then before you know it, I've got a Death Star Lego.
Yeah, I've actually a buddy of mine 1 year for my daughter's birthday, maybe or Christmas. He ordered. What did he order? Was it the Batmobile? It might have been the Batmobile or the Infinity Gauntlet. He
Yeah,
ordered like one of those Lego sets, and she loves Legos anyway, and she I want to say it was the Batmobile. We put the Batmobile together, both of us, and um it was a good time, and then
mm,
she says, Dad, here, you go ahead and keep it, because you look at the basement, it's just filled with action figures and all the things. So now we have a Lego shelf. So then he then got a I think there's like a Wakanda Forever set
yeah,
with Namor. So we did that cute little set, put that together, and then he sent the Infinity Gauntlet,
yeah,
and that became kind of a thing. That was a project for the
yeah,
both of us. And again, my daughter was like, Dad, keep it downstairs, with your stuff. So I put it in the cabinet with the MCU figures.
yeah,
But one thing I can say that with doing Legos, and I'm I go to the Lego store probably 3 times a week. I don't buy anything,
yeah,
but it's like I'm like tiptoeing. But one of the things like doing Legos with my daughter really kind of showed me is like we are not the same in
yeah,
terms of like how we organize it, because I like to like I'll get a tray so that way everything's contained,
yeah,
like nothing's gonna fall to the floor. Everything's contained in this little section, even like a little box. And then we open up one bag and then we
yeah,
do that one bag.
yeah.
Whereas if it's just my daughter and I'm not there, she opens it all up on a table, no boundaries or nothing. Pieces are
Yeah,
falling on the floor, and I'm just looking like, yo, like what are you doing? Like, do you I had to ask my friends one day. Like I was asking around everybody. It was like, cats that don't even do Legos. It was like, yo, like if you did Legos, would you just dump them out on a table, or would you kind of like put them like how would you do this? I was like, I'd probably like, put them like on a tray or something. I was like, yeah, exactly, right. You
yeah.
put them on a tray. I was like, maybe it's just my daughter's a sociopath. I don't know. Like,
It's probably that range of autism, isn't it, where you're like, going all the way to like sorting it out by parts and weight and color and things like that, to unbelievable chaos of just dumping it on the table and being like Rain Man and being able to see everything.
yeah, yeah, when I look at that, I'm just like, no, this is not okay. We need organization. And she's like, no,
Yeah,
I got this. And she's great at Legos. So I mean it
yeah,
works for her, but I'm just like, look, we can't do Legos together. This is
yeah,
one moment where we're not gonna bond
yeah.
because you are chaos and I am order.
Well, one thing my daughter's like obviously kind of like combining, like just before Christmas, she wanted to watch like the Harry Potter movies. Like we
Mm,
tried a couple of times and she's like wasn't really into it because I had real people into it. But then she watched them all. And that was really cool because like obviously I'd read the books and all that kind of stuff. And she would have questions about the law and things and how things work, and then be able to answer them. So on about getting to the books and things like that. And she's like really digging into that. She finds super interesting. So um, I'm good that there's not anything like that about. I think Lord of the Rings might be a bit of a big step for her. Like mainly
my
just because of the size of the movies and like that
yeah.
lore is crazy. Like, but you don't need to know the lore to enjoy the movies really on that one. So um
Yeah, like when I first I remember when the Fellowship of the Ring came out. I had no interest. I was just like, nah, but I saw the trailer for the Two Towers,
yeah,
and I was like, oh my lord, I'm in on this.
yeah,
So I tried to watch Fellowship, and I think I've only made it through that movie one time,
Yeah.
like just straight. Most times I will fall asleep or I'd have to take a break, whatever it may be. And it's a good movie. It's great. But I don't know why I struggle with that one. But Two Towers, I'm dialed in. And then Return of the King, it's like that's a whole thing for me.
Mm.
And like we talked about introducing her to the Lord of the Rings. Because right now, what my wife and daughter, what they've been doing is my wife has been reading the Harry Potter series with my daughter,
Oh, cool.
and then they sit down and watch the movie
Yeah.
after they finish the book.
Yeah.
So we've gotten through the first two.
Yeah.
So and like they take like like a 2 month break in between. So
Mm.
I think around April, maybe March or so, they're gonna start book three.
Yeah.
Um, and I like that, but it's like, okay, let's not do that with Lord of the Rings. Let's
Yeah.
just like it's one or the other. Either give her the books or let's jump into the movies. And I get why she's doing that with the Harry Potter
Yeah.
series. That's cool, but it's like, look, I want to do this Lord of the Ring things with her,
Yeah.
and I don't want to wait for the books.
Yeah, I think doing the movies is the way to go because uh, I think it took me a couple of goes to read the books. Like when I was younger, it was like a hard read to be able to
Mhm.
kind of like get through it. And that law is like really, really deep with like so much kind of stuff going on. Um, this is an unpopular opinion, but I quite liked Rings of Power. I know not many people do, but I quite enjoyed it.
I I think my wife enjoys it. I haven't watched it. Um,
Mm.
like I try to sit so my wife she likes that she likes the Game of Thrones and then I guess whatever House of the Dragon as
Yeah,
well.
I haven't
She
watched that,
likes
to be honest.
I haven't sat down for those yet. I honestly, even with Game of Thrones, I would watch them like side by side with my wife, but I wasn't watching them per se.
Mm.
I was present. But like when it comes to the Lord of the Rings and the Ring of Power, like she really enjoys it. I don't know. I think also too because of the internet and
Mm.
like everybody has a voice now. I think people are a lot more critical of things, even when something's good. They just want to criticize it
Yeah,
just because is it's like, well, I didn't like this. Like you could watch a full episode, but like an hour,
yeah,
you can get 50 minutes of really, really good content, but you get 1 minute of just something was like, and then they'll like say that ruined the whole show. It's like that
yeah,
1 minute ruined the whole hour. And it's like, dude, you're just nitpicking at this point. And I think that's one of those things with Ring of Power where people are just like, well, it's not what like or expectation too.
yeah,
There's the expectation that people have where it's like there's this entitlement, whenever we get a movie or a series or a show or something, it's like, well, they didn't do what I wanted them to do. Well, then
mm,
fucking go write it then. You go write
yeah.
it. Go put
It's
it out.
uh,
Otherwise, just be entertained. Watch.
it's like it's not cool to like stuff anymore. Like
Yes.
some of the fandom, like Star Wars especially, is so horrible and toxic. Like it's like they really hate to like something. Like they had to wait something like 20 years to like the prequels. You know what I mean? Yeah, slate them for that period of time, and then they're the greatest thing ever. Like it's it's like yeah, it's like it's not cool to enjoy something. Like you've got to kind of find fault in it rather than go, yeah, well that was really cool. I didn't like this and that. Like since like we talked about at Endgame there, I didn't like Hulk and Thor in it, but the bit at the end where Captain America does Avengers Assemble, like I still
Mhm.
get goosebumps. Like when I watch that, like it's like one of those amazing moments. But I'm not going to slate the entire movie just for some subplots that I don't like.
Yeah, I mean that's always the tricky thing. It's like again with Endgame, same deal. It's like that first hour, I liked it. That second hour, I not so much. The third hour, you know, it's just like you said, I'm getting goosebumps right now,
Yeah,
just like thinking about it because it's like it was a great epic battle. It felt like a comic book, and you have to be able to take enjoyment out of things. It's like we do a horror podcast, and we watch Halloween Ends,
Yeah.
and it's not a good movie at all. No, it's and like we watched it and then recorded immediately after turning the movie off.
Yeah.
So it was like you're getting the first reaction. Like there's no time to think. You got to get that reaction right there on the spot.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I think it's a bad movie. I think it's a bad Michael Myers movie.
Yeah.
But if you discount, it's like trying to find a positive to the movie. It's like, well, they had great kills. If you
Yeah.
take away the Michael Myers aspect of the movie, it's not completely terrible. It's
Yeah.
just not a good, it's like, and maybe, maybe people will say, well, like you're trying too hard to like appease. And it's like, no, I'm just trying not to be super negative about everything.
Yeah.
I always want to, like, I will tell you if something sucks or if I
Yeah.
think it sucks, but I'm also going to tell you, if I, the things that I do like, because not everything is always all bad,
Yeah.
like the new Star Wars, the last trilogy.
Yeah.
I think there's a thing where it's like we come from, the original trilogy, the prequel trilogies, and there's a love for those things. Even with the prequel trilogies, there's a lot of hate at the
Yeah.
time,
Huge.
but then it became loved later on.
Yeah.
And now we get the sequel trilogy, and it's one of those things where it's like you get Force Awakens, and you get
Yeah.
this thing where it's like, okay, there's a lot of nostalgia. We're back
Yeah.
to that again, like killing with nostalgia, and it was enjoyable because it was like, okay,
Yeah.
this felt like original Star Wars. Then you
Yeah.
get the Last Jedi, and it's like, okay, this is different, but it's beautiful. It looks beautiful. It looks
It's
really
not the
good.
word I used for that movie.
No. Beautiful in terms of like cinematography.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, like
Yeah.
it looks really, really nice, but
Yeah.
it's like the movie itself is like, okay, I need to, the throne room battle, lightsaber
Yeah.
battle. Okay, there's my positive there. Loved
Yeah.
it. Then you get to Rise of Skywalker,
Yeah.
and it's like that's the one where I'm like, I am finding it very hard to find positive here,
Yeah.
but um uh fuck, but it's like, but even with that, there was like still on a path of like, look, there's some positivity, and then it gets to a point where it's like, okay, maybe there's a line, but for a lot of folks though, there is no line. It's like a lot of folks, everything is always negative. It's like
Yeah.
because there's this expectation of like they didn't do what I wanted them to do, and I don't like that. And it's like, and that's fine, but you have to also understand too. It's like, well, we as the audience, we do have, kind of a voice here. But if you didn't like it, then don't pay to see it. That's why they continue to make the things that they make, because people
Yeah.
continue to pay to go
Yeah.
see it.
And I do think it's possible to like bad movies and vice versa, dislike good movies.
Oh yeah,
Like, like for example, I don't like the first Joker movie. I know it is an
same.
incredible movie, but I I watch movies to feel good and have escapism and stuff like that, and it just doesn't deliver that. Like, so it's not for me. But on the other side of it, I really like Spider-Man 3. But that was, objectively a terrible movie.
Yeah,
So, but there was bits in it that I really liked, that lets me ignore, you know, a lot of other stuff. So I think it's possible to watch a bad movie and like it, and vice versa. Go, I know this is a good movie, but it's not really for me. But that doesn't mean I've got to absolutely slate it to anybody who does like it. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like, I think the problem with like the internet now, isn't it, that it's kind of, if I don't like it and you do, I have to tell you why you are wrong to like it, rather than just going, "That's cool, but it's just not for me." You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like, so it's that for some reason can't happen on the internet. It's like, my perspective and my opinion is the only one that matters. I am now going to tell you all the reasons why you are wrong. Um,
yeah. I mean, that's that's kind of that whole thing. Like, everybody's, got a voice, and that's fine. We all have a voice. It doesn't mean we need to hear everybody's voice, though.
Yeah,
You know, it's like you can talk into, like, a trash bag. It's fine. Just I don't need to hear, and I think there's a thing though too. It's like where people, and this kind of goes on both sides, good or bad. It's like you want to, have people that agree with you.
yeah,
So, if people say, hey, I didn't like this movie, you want to hear somebody else say, you're right, I hated it too. Like you said, you weren't crazy about the Joker, the
yeah,
first Joker movie, nor was I. And yes, I think it was a fantastic movie. I
yeah,
just personally did not like it myself. And then the thing is, I bought the movie thinking like, okay, I'm in. And I bought it. I was like, fuck. Meanwhile, I rented Shazam and I was like, shit, I should have bought Shazam.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
like,
Shazam. I didn't mind Shazam at all. Like I thought it was, like it's again like technically a bad movie, I suppose. Like a lot of people kind of like slayed it, missed the mark, but again, like I thought it was okay. Um,
it
Batman versus Superman, I thought that was okay.
was fine.
Like it had like bits in it that like I really, really liked. I think sometimes as well, if you're going to see something and so many people have shitted on it and say how bad it was, that your expectations are so low. So when you expect it to be shit, but then when some bits are good, you're like, oh well, this is actually much better than what I thought it was going to
Oh
be.
yeah.
But uh, that doesn't apply to the Last Jedi. That's just that.
Uh, well, when I went to see the Marvels, I
Yeah,
actually went into that movie with the lowest possible expectations. Like I was like, oh, like, and I went to see it for work. I took my
yeah,
guys. I was like, all right, let's go see it. And I walked out there like this was okay. Like,
yeah,
but also too, we're in that age of the internet, the super age of the internet, where a lot of people trashed the movie. A lot of people didn't see the movie though, but they
yeah,
trashed the movie, having not seen the movie. So that created this vacuum, where everybody's like, well, don't go see that movie. It's terrible. It's the lowest grossing Marvel movie, to date. And it's like, yeah, because you all are trashing it without having seen it. Meanwhile, I went to see it, I was like, hey, this was actually fine. It was no masterpiece by any means. It wasn't great, but it was a movie where it was like, what's all the hate for? And
yeah.
I don't like to play in the sandbox of like, there are people like, well, they didn't want to see a movie with a strong female lead. No, I don't think that's what it was.
No,
Not at all. I do think that Brie Larson playing the role is a little flat, maybe.
yeah,
Um, and doesn't really have like a personality to the character. Whereas like you look at Captain Marvel in the comics, and she's a strong, like in your face type character who won't back down from shit. And
yeah.
I just don't get that feeling from Brie Larson.
No,
And like the only time I got that feeling was in Endgame when she stood toe to toe with Thanos. I was like, okay, that's the character we want to see. And
mm,
you didn't get that even in the sequel. You didn't get that
yeah,
in the Marvels, but the movie still wasn't a bad movie, but people made it out to be so bad without having seen it. And it's like, I just don't, and that's why like a lot of movies, I try not to hear anyone's opinion on it
yeah,
because I want to go in and I watch a lot of horror movies, and traditionally a lot of horror movies aren't really good, like
yeah,
by traditional standards. I enjoy a lot of them, even the really really bad ones, and then the ones that are like deemed really really good. I'm just kind of like, I mean, it's kind of pretentious. It's
yeah,
like,
yeah,
yes, if that's good, that's good, but that's not what I'm here for. I'm here for like, I'm here for the shits. I'm not here for like thought-provoking movies when I'm watching a horror movie. I want to
yeah,
see someone's like innards get dragged out,
yeah.
you know.
But it's the kind of thing, isn't it, at the moment that like people don't form their own opinions; they just regurgitate what someone else has said, and that's across like all topics. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
they'll do it for you know everything from sports to opinions on movies to opinions on politics, like all that kind of stuff. Like everybody just doesn't go and watch the source and like do any kind of research around it and form like a complete picture themselves. They just, oh, so and so said it, so like this is true, and it's just like, well, that's not the case. Um,
Yeah.
I have to stop myself on many occasions, like where I see stuff that's just not true online, like on Instagram and that, and like how many times I've wrote out a comment and then deleted it. Like it's like I don't need to. I don't need to involve myself with this, but you just feel like compelled to.
Yeah, I do it. I don't reply to a lot of comments. If I do, I give like an emoji, or I might, just say something short, like, something really short, like if it's a positive comment. If it's a negative comment on my own post, especially, I just like kind of go by it. Now, if I go to another person's post
Yeah,
and it's something wild, I'm gonna go to the comments because I want to see what's going on.
yeah,
I gotta hear. But even when I see some of these comments, it's like I could chime in right here, but do I
yeah,
need to? Because is it worth my energy? Probably not.
yeah,
They're already arguing, and also what I'm hearing too is like people are using AI now to argue online. So they'll, like, if you make a comment, they will copy and paste your comment, drop it in AI, get a response, and then copy and paste that response back to you. And it's like, wow, okay, this
it's not
is,
even your opinion or
yeah,
expertise that you're replying with. Like
yeah.
it's yeah, like when it comes to negative comments and things like that, like I've got a zero tolerance policy. Like criticism is different, like as long as it's constructive criticism and you can have like, a discussion around it. But
Mhm.
anyone who posts like any kind of negative stuff, I just delete the comment and block the person. Like,
Yeah.
and it's like my kind of like view where it's like it's my page, buddy, it's my content. If you don't like it, move on. Like,
Yeah.
but I'm not doing this and putting effort into something to you like feel entitled to be able to shit on it. Like I have the power and the ability to remove you from that situation. Um, it'd be good if I could transfer that power to real life, but there's no. And I think this is the thing, like, and you're probably the same, how we're going to raise our daughters with social media and things like that, like we didn't
Hmm.
have, and kind of getting across to them that, you do have this level of power, that if somebody says something or comments something, it doesn't mean that you have to respond and try and justify yourself. You can literally just remove them and the problem is gone.
Yeah.
Because you never change anybody's mind online. No one has ever gotten into an online argument and then gone, actually, you were right. That is a great movie. Like that's never ever happened.
I've actually seen one person do that.
Whoa.
Like they actually, reversed course. And I was like, holy shit. Like I wanted to comment to that person
Yeah.
after that, but I was like, I can't get involved. I have to be the watcher. I can't get involved. Like,
What?
but they basically said, like, hey, I looked, they came back to it, hours later, like, look, I looked into it further and you're absolutely right. And I was like, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
Like, this exists on the internet?
That's
Like, this,
crazy. But they
like,
came back as well. Like how many
yeah,
people would get proved wrong and then just vanish into like the nether? Like,
I
but
think that's one of those things though with people on the internet, especially, is like we want so badly to be right
yeah.
that they'll use AI to give them the answer, which AI isn't always right.
Mm-hmm.
I use AI for my outlines for my
Mm-hmm.
horror podcast, but I have to proofread it. I don't just
Yeah.
like blindly like say this is the outline, we're gonna go with it. I'll go through it because what I'm doing is I get a frame and then I build off of the frame that's there with my information
Yeah.
and then kind of go. But there's one episode we did like kind of right on the fly, like
Yeah.
like in the moment. We were just sitting here one night. I was like, y'all want to do an episode on this? Bet. All right. So I pulled up an outline and I didn't proofread it.
Yeah.
And I want to say not it was a little less than half of the information was like inaccurate. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh no. And as I'm reading through, I'm trying to catch myself as I'm reading through. I'm like, oh my God, like this is so bad. All right, let's
Yeah.
just go off the top of our heads now. With what information we do have, we can make this work. But when people are sitting there using AI for arguments, it's like, you're so dumb. You don't even know that, like most of that shit's probably not right either, though. You're
Yeah.
just reading off of a script that you're assuming because you want to be right, and that's just the thing. It's like it's okay to be wrong.
Yeah.
I I look at like that's an opportunity to learn. If you're
Yeah,
wrong about something, here's now an opportunity for you to learn, what is actually the facts, and
yeah,
grow from there versus like I have to always be right. I have to be the rightest person in the world. It's like playing a video game on easy. Like
yeah.
grow up.
It's kind of like when you're having discussions with people and they've never changed their stance or their mind on something as they've got older, and you're
Mhm.
like, that's not good. That doesn't mean you were right constantly. That means that you are unbelievably stuck. Like, there's so much that we change our minds on as we get older and get experience, or even when it comes to like science-based stuff, new evidence comes out and you look at that, so you can kind of make more educated decisions, etc. Like, if you're
Yeah.
just a person who would rather get opinions and evidence off AI rather than changing your own opinion based on the evidence, like, there's no prizes on social media for doing that. You don't gain anything. No one's paying you. Like, and you never win in that argument ever. You know what I mean? Like, there's people that you can argue that anything. The world is flat. You know what I mean? We're controlled by space lizards. Like, you know what I mean? Like, the most preposterous stuff that you can find. You can find somebody who you can present all the data to, all the science, absolutely everything, and they're just like, yeah. So you're never changing any apart from that one dude, wherever he is. May he live forever.
Oh my god, yes.
He should have it on his bio. The one man that changed his mind on the internet.
Yeah, like he should be the leader of the world at this point. It's like, oh my god, like you're a rational thinker.
Yeah,
Like that's
it must have
crazy.
confused the other person. That when he's come back and said you're right, you'd be like, "What do I do here? Like, do I thank him? Like, do I go ha ha in your face? Like,
Well, and
what?
that was
What's
the
the
thing.
point?"
Like the conversation, like afterward, it was like it was very positive.
Yeah,
And the other person didn't gloat about it or anything, but they did thank them. They did
yeah,
thank them for going, and looking further into it, and then admitting that they were incorrect. And I love seeing that type of engagement on the internet
yeah,
versus like super negativity. Like when I look at my algorithm, like I have so many different Instagram accounts and all the algorithms are all so different. But the
yeah,
one thing that I can say for all of them is I try so hard to keep negative stuff out of it.
yeah,
And because I go to social media kind of like to like veg out. I'm just like I'm
yeah,
here. Let's look at some jujitsu stuff. Let's look at some comic book stuff. Let's
yeah,
look at like horror movie stuff. And it's like it's just one of those things where it's like I don't want to have to come across stuff that's going to get me riled up in a way
yeah,
where I feel like I have to argue with people, like in the horror community with I guess one of the uh actresses for Scream. you
yeah,
know there was just a whole thing with it because like the original actress Nev Campbell, they didn't bring her back because she wanted more money, so there's a whole campaign of people saying like we're with Nev, we hate Scream. And it's like,
yeah,
okay, weird. And then when they made the other movies without, they made one movie without her, and then the actress who was in like number 5 and 6, she, I guess, I'm not sure with the whole Palestine and Israel thing. I'm not even sure if I even have the two locations correct. But whatever it is, she was like pro one side, anti the other, and she got fired from the movie apparently. And then everybody was like, "Oh, we hate Scream. We stand with her now."
yeah,
And like we're not gonna ever watch Scream because of this. And it's like, dude, I just want to see, is it moving forward?
yeah,
Are we moving forward with a movie? Like what other movies are coming out this year?
mm,
Any, updates behind the scenes or other stuff? And
mm,
it's like all these questions whenever you see online, it's like on my Facebook, I'm in like some of the groups, and it's like always questions like, "What's the worst horror movie that you've ever seen?" Or "What's
yeah,
the dumbest horror movie that you've ever seen?" It's like, why does it always have to be a negative like question?
yeah,
Like you guys just want to make arguments. Why don't we ever go to like, can you tell me like, some dialogue from a horror movie that you really, really liked?
yeah, yeah,
Some shit like, but people feed off of negativity, unfortunately.
yeah,
And that's just the thing. Even as I'm like talking about this, I feel like, even that's negative in itself, where it's like, oh, this is sparking discussion. It's like, Nah, it's like you want to always find what's good. Like,
Yeah.
be happy,
Um,
y'all.
like I've got friends that I've literally had to say to look like, look, dude, I'm like unfollowing you online. Like, you are not the person online that you are in real life. Like, um, I find myself questioning if I like you when I'm reading like the stuff that you write. But
Hmm.
when I see you in person, you are not like that at all. So I don't understand like the shift. Like, I try to be as authentic as I can, but obviously we've got different versions of ourselves that we, that we present.
Yes.
Like, I work like I've got like an office at home, and my wife like has a desk. I mean, we both work from home. But she like I laugh with it when I hear her do calls and things like that. Like she'll become the work version of her that obviously I'd never see. There's certain you're like, whoa, this is wild. Like seeing this like other person. Like you're so professional. How did this happen?
Yeah, that my buddy said that one time he was with me at work. We were young. Like I worked at a storage facility back in the early 2000s. Well, I worked recently too, but like in the early 2000s, and it was a slow job. So he'd come over and hang out. We like I'd bring my TV and like Xbox. We played video games like while at work. Um, and like I would answer the phone. It was super professional.
Yeah,
And he said to me one, he was like, "Dude, what the fuck was that?" I was like, "What do you
yeah,
mean?" He was like, "I've never heard you speak like that ever."
yeah,
I was like, "Well, I don't know what you're saying." He was like he was like, "No, like pay attention to how you're talking." He was like, "You're so nice."
yeah,
He was like, "Fuck you, I'm a nice person." He was like,
yeah,
"Yeah, but like it's different. Like you're really nice and really helpful to that person."
yeah,
Da, da, da. And then we talked about it one day on our other podcast, and he had pointed this out because he brought that back up, and he goes, you know, you're like if I open like any kind of a business, like a restaurant or something, I would have you in customer service.
yeah,
Like you were like the best customer service person I've ever met. And I was like, well, thank you. I appreciate that. But it's just, it's kind of like an autopilot thing. I
yeah,
don't think about it. It's just like, it's the job. I think we do that, a lot, in the positive ways though, too. It's like, like you say, you see somebody talking online, like really, really aggressively and kind of negative. And it's like, but then they're not that person. And, when you see them in person, it's like,
yeah,
it's weird because it's like, huh, like, are they even aware of that?
yeah,
Because sometimes we just like I feel like I genuinely do feel like I am who I am here. If we were to meet, I'd be a little awkward just because I'm awkward in person. But
yeah,
after like 10 minutes, it's like, okay, we're rolling now. Like,
yeah,
I get, I'm me. But, like between all the podcasts, between going to different gyms, visiting people, my attitude at work, dealing with my family, it's like in the different friend groups that I have, it's like
mm,
you can always say that I'm authentically me. Whatever version of the weirdo you see, that is like that to be true. It's like, okay,
yeah,
that checks. He's a little
yeah,
awkward there. And we've seen that before.
yeah. It's crazy.
Like I don't even think like even in job interviews, it's like it's just because I'm very big on just presenting who you are.
Yeah,
That way it's not a shocker later on. And like my daughter, I try to exhibit that for her too, almost too much because my daughter's she's a little odd, which I mean is fine because we're all odd, but it's like she'll do
yeah,
some shit and I'm like, hey, so maybe chill a little bit. Then it's
yeah,
like, no, you know what, baby, be you, be
yeah,
authentically yourself, embrace your inner weirdo, and don't let anyone. There's like some little boy in the neighborhood um that was trying to like pick on her. And I told her, I was like, don't let him get in your feelings. What you say to him if because he was talking about her hair. Then you ask him why. You know, chances are he doesn't have an answer.
yeah,
Like he's a 9-year-old boy. He's a little
yeah,
dumb. I was dumb at 9 also.
yeah. 100%.
But I would say shit that I heard somewhere else. But if you challenge me on it, I didn't have an answer. So
Yeah,
I told her, I was like, next time he says something about you, you ask him, well, why do you feel that way? And I promise you, he'll have a very one dimensional answer. Well, because, and then
yeah,
because what? Like I had a neighbor who used to do that, and I challenged him. And I remember Yeah, I was like, why? He was like, because. I was like, okay, but because what? And he was like, because I'm gonna hit you if you don't leave me alone. I was like, you're not gonna hit me though.
Yeah,
It's like you don't have an answer. Just say
yeah,
you don't have an answer. I've done that before, and that was kind of that moment where I clicked my mind. You know what? Maybe I'm kind of a dick. Maybe I
yeah,
need to like have some like back up to like my answers. Like, but also you don't need to explain yourself too. Sometimes like when
yeah,
little kids ask my daughter, why can't she come outside?
yeah,
And she explains, and I told her, like, you don't got to explain yourself. If you want to stay in here and watch Bluey, stay in here and watch Bluey. You ain't got to tell
yeah,
nobody why you don't want to come outside.
yeah,
So I don't know. But ultimately, let's all be good people. Let's be cool. Embrace your inner weirdo and let's nerd it out.
yeah.
Mike, this has been awesome, dude. Thank you for doing this. Um, it's like I was thinking about this all day Friday. Was like, how are we going to do this? What are we going to talk about? I didn't make an outline or anything. I was like, let's just jump in, because sometimes these conversations don't need an outline. They just need us to be genuine and from the heart with what we have to say. So thank you for making this a great conversation, and sharing your words with us.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, buddy. It's been brilliant. It's no charter coming on and talk things that you love. So anytime.
Oh, awesome, awesome. Yeah, and I definitely, it's like I feel like it's like we talk so much about it. It's like, is there more? I was like, I'm sure there's more. I'd love to do it again.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, before we get out of here, do you have any shout outs or mentions that you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Mm, not really. If
Like,
anybody cares what I've got to say about nutrition, there's like the previous podcast that we did together. That's cool, and you can find me on Instagram and social medias and Unorthodox Nutrition. Um, but apart from that, no, really, I don't really want to sell myself on talking about nerd stuff. That's weird. Um, so it's just thanks for having me, but no, really, really, it's been a blast.
absolutely, man. Thank you. It's weird because I think it was like, how do I normally end these episodes? I don't even know. I normally sit down with Phil, and I think we just kind of close out. I probably
Yeah,
do like my close out, but I'm usually like, I don't know. I think we're done. But
yeah,
but as always, to you guys, the listeners, thank you. If y'all have any questions or concerns, criticisms even, feel free to reach out. You can find me at bjj.wiki on Instagram or Off the Mets Podcast, also on Instagram. Uh, you know, I'm here. I'm here for the people. I listen. I love you guys. I want to give a big shout out to my crew over there at Nerd Rage Radio. Since we were really heavy into the nerd topics here today, go listen to Nerd Rage. They're the reason I'm even doing the podcast. This is how I got started. Bobby, Chris, Joe, Marilyn, Phil, Ricky Ticky. Hell, even shout out to Adam, Adam Russman, because he was an original over there as well. Big shout out to all those guys. If it weren't for them, I wouldn't be doing this. I want to also give a shout out to my other podcast. So you like horror, if you like scary movies, go check that shit out. I don't know what will be on by the time this episode comes out, but we're talking about remakes versus originals as the theme for this year. So you'll probably stumble into one of those episodes. I think they'll probably be around my birthday too. We'll probably be doing like a Dante's top 10. I don't know what we're gonna do, because there's an episode that's gonna come out on my birthday, and I'll figure that shit out. But I'll go check it out. So you like horror on Instagram. All the words are separated by underscores. And last but not least, I want to give a big shout out and thank you to my guest here, Mike Leng. Uh, it was a good time, a good conversation. And again, when we even brought up the idea of doing this episode, I was excited and I was like, yes, yes. Like, I love doing the Nerdcast episodes, but it's usually with Marilyn Phil. So this
yeah,
for sure was different, because Marilyn Phil and I usually have like a direct show that we're going to sit down and talk about, or a direct movie, and we go. So thank you for, helping me with this experiment. And Phil, don't worry, you're not being replaced. You're not being replaced, Phil. I know I joke about that on the horror podcast with you. I'm not replacing you, dude. You're my guy. And we're going to get an episode in probably for Daredevil. When Daredevil comes, I'm sure we'll watch it and we'll talk about it. But thank you. And thank you to the listeners. You guys know what it is. We love you. You guys keep listening, and we're going to definitely keep making these shows. Thank you, everybody, and goodbye.
Deep with it. Now let me sing a song.